You know, there's close to 100 individual parts comprising the suspension setup on your BMW E46. And each one of those parts has been meticulously designed and engineered to ensure that you get the ultimate driving experience. But here's a question for you. When was the last time you got down and took a close look at all those components in your suspension? So in this video, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to think closely about the suspension setup on your E46. And in doing so, it's going to ensure that you'll continue to get the ultimate driving experience. My name's Michael Taylor and welcome to 64 Motorsport. So before we get really into it, I'm going to ask another question of you. What is the very first thing that jumps to mind when I say the word suspension? Now what I'd like you to do is write that down in the comment section below. Now obviously I'm not going to know what your answers are until after I've uploaded the video, but I'll be really interested to see what you've got to say. Performance is not just about horsepower or fuel economy, it's also about the handling of your BMW. And the job of controlling the handling on your E46 falls squarely onto the shoulders of your suspension setup. Yep, all 100 parts. But here's another question for you. How often or frequently do you change the oil in your E46 engine? Is it every 5,000 miles, 10,000, or maybe 15? Why is it that you change the oil so religiously? It's generally because you know that with age the oil gets dirty and the molecules within the oil start to break down, which means that the oil's less efficient at doing the job it's meant to. But what's the media that absorbs the shocks from the undulations in the road and allows the piston within the cylinder to move freely up and down? Well, it's oil. So if your BMW's done 100,000 kilometers or 80,000 miles, how effective or efficient do you think that oil is now at doing the job that it was designed for? But you might be saying to me, well, it's a sealed unit, so it's not going to get dirty. But that's not necessarily correct, because every time that piston moves up and down within the cylinder of that strut, it scrapes away microscopic particles of metal which then get trapped in the oil. And due to the hot and cold heat cycle, those changes in temperature affect the molecules of the oil. So now you've got a dirty, less effective oil within the strut. You might be thinking that your strut is still performing pretty good. These changes to the efficiency of the strut happen very minutely. They happen over a period of time, which gives you an opportunity as the driver to start making micro adjustments to your driving style to compensate for it. Because it's not like it all of a sudden happens at once. It goes from really good to really bad. Now consider this also. There are rubber seals within the strut, but also rubber components around the coil and the strut itself. At the top of your coil spring and below, there's a rubber perch which insulates from having a metal-on-metal surface and helps to reduce NVH. And if you want to know more about NVH, well, here's a link to a video that I made earlier on the subject. And to help illustrate this, here is a couple of the rubber spring mounts from my E53 when I recently did a refresh. And the rubber, apart from looking very dirty and tired, has sort of deformed and molded to the shape of where it sits on the car, but the rubber's kind of hard. It's not that soft, pliable rubber which you would like to feel. That means that it's not as efficient at reducing the NVH. So when you're doing an inspection, maybe the coil is still in good nick, but check the rubber components. At the top of your strut, there is a rubber strut mount. And this here is a rear strut mount off the 46, and these are prone to failure. Over time that rubber's going to get hard and brittle, and eventually that rubber can actually pull through this metal housing. Now when this happens, you'll start to notice a really loud knocking noise coming from the rear of your car. So that's a good indication that it's past its use by date. While we're on the subject of rubber components, now's also a good time to start thinking about all those rubber bushes that are installed within your suspension setup on your BMW. There's absolutely heaps of them. On the strut there's rubber boots, rubber bump stops. Also within the strut there's rubber O-rings. You've got control arm bushings, tie rod bushings, trailing arm bushings, subframe and diff bushings, and then ball joints. And once again, these components can wear out, become hard, and in a worst case scenario, they can actually fail, which once again will start to lead to a knocking noise coming from underneath your car. But it's really important that you don't let these components get to that point where they completely fail. Because firstly, it can be dangerous, but secondly, it can cause additional damage to other components on your car, which can be really costly and add to the expense of repair. A really good example of this is your diff and diff carrier bushings and the rear strut mount. When these components fail and no longer do the job that they're designed to, it can not only mean that you have to replace the bushings, this can also lead to cracking in the subframe and in your strut tower, and that is now a $4,000 to $5,000 fix. Regardless of the fact that a mechanic does all the servicing and repairs on your BMW, there's generally a long time between service intervals, and in that time a lot can happen. So as the owner and driver of the car, I feel it's really important that you get a good understanding what's going on underneath your car. In other words, between your bum and the road. Out of sight shouldn't mean out of mind. So my challenge for you this weekend is to get your car up onto stands, grab a torch and a rag, have a good crawl around and look at all those parts that make up the suspension components on your E46. Now, if you're not really sure what you should be looking for and how it all pieces together, I suggest you go to realoem.com, and I'll put a link below so that you can check that out. Type in your vehicle's details or the VIN number and then go to these sections, front axle and rear axle, and check out all the components that make up the suspension on your E46. This will give you a clear idea what you need to be looking at when you get underneath the car. It's a really useful tool, and it's also good for getting part numbers for when you have to replace parts. But here's my top tip for improving the handling on your BMW E46. And the good thing is it's relatively cost effective, so it's not going to cost an arm and a leg. It's the sort of job that you can do yourself at home on a Saturday or a Sunday, and it's a good upgrade regardless of whether your car is stock or whether you've added a few mods. And finally, it's not going to make any difference to the amount of NVH that you experience after you've installed it. And what I'm talking about is your sway bar bushes. A really good upgrade is to replace the standard rubber bush with polyurethane bushes. And the reason this is a good upgrade is because the polyurethane is that much stiffer than the rubber. It means that your sway bar now works more efficiently at controlling the body roll as you're going around corners. But the other thing with your sway bar is the effectiveness of your sway bar also has an impact in terms of the amount of understeer or oversteer that you may experience. So having a firmer bush there is also going to make an improvement in terms of reducing the amount of understeer or oversteer. Now, I'd also recommend, while you're mucking around with the sway bar, that you get yourself a new set of sway bar end links and put those on as well. They are rubber components in those end links which can wear out over time and become less efficient, which will affect your sway bar's performance. There's my tip. Polyurethane bushes for your sway bar, both front and back, and new sway bar end links, and you'll love the improved handling performance from this simple upgrade. Anyway, I look forward to reading your comments about what jumps into your mind. I've already got a reasonable idea what you're going to say, but I'm not going to preempt anything by saying it out loud. So I look forward to reading those comments, but if there's anything else you'd like to comment on regarding the suspension and what you may have found after you stuck your head underneath the car and had a look over the weekend, I'd be really interested to hear about that. As always, if you've liked the video, please hit that like button because it really helps out my channel when you do. And if you'd like to see more BMW content on performance upgrades, maintenance and DIY tips, and also to follow the build of my supercharged BMW E46 325 Ci, consider subscribing and ringing the bell, and that way you'll get a notification every time I upload a new video. But as always, I've really enjoyed your company. Thank you very much for watching, and until we meet again, look after yourselves, stay safe, and TTFN.